My father-in-law is in prison for trying to kill me. Now I know he was trying to be kind. 1 year ago, my father-in-law tried to murder me. He planned it beautifully, the trip up to the cabin in the woods that his family owned, pushing me into the dried-up old well, pickpocketed my phone, left a gun within the well that gave me the option of killing myself instead of starving to death, his twisted version of mercy, I guess. Either way, he would have got away with it. He hadn't accounted for the lost dog, though. Hadn't thought that a couple would come looking for a beloved pet who had raced off after a day. That they would find me half dead from starvation and dehydration, holding the gun, contemplating it seriously after nearly 3 days in the well, fully aware that I was going to die of thirst before starvation. There had been no rain for days. When I woke up in hospital, my wife Samantha was by my side holding my hand, a beautiful face wet with tears. Despite my own physical pain, all I wanted to do was make her stop crying. So I softly took her hand and with great effort raised it to my lips and gave it a gentle kiss. "I was so worried about you. What happened to you?" She begged me, green eyes bright with tears. The nurse came in and took my vitals, then told my wife that she should leave me to sleep some more. I was glad for the rescue because I knew once I revealed what had really happened to me, my wife's heart would break permanently. Her father had always been her favorite person. I met Samantha at work 3 years ago. She was the marketing executive where I was a software developer. We were both in our late 20s and I knew within 10 minutes of our first conversation that I was going to marry her. She was bright, funny, clever, and it didn't hurt that she was absolutely gorgeous with bright green eyes and long red hair. 4 months into dating her, she met my family. I come from a massive family where both my parents had 4 siblings each and then went on to have 5 kids together too. Our Sunday lunches allowed raucous events at my folks' place with at least 20 people in attendance, but Sam was utterly charmed by my family, and my parents and siblings adored her. She fit right in like the missing piece of a jigsaw puzzle. Everything was going so well until Sam decided it was time for me to meet her only family member, her father. Cameron Joyce was a tall, burly man who dressed and looked like a lumberjack. He lived in a neighborhood at the very edge of the suburbs, close to a big, wide forest. When he stiffly shook my hand, his blue eyes ice cold, a sort of chill ran through me. After we walked into the 2-bedroom house behind him, the first red flag should have been that there were no photos of Sam's mother. Not one. In fact, if I truly thought about it, Sam never really spoke about her mother. I should have asked more questions about her, but I guess I always just assumed that the subject was too painful for her. The first time I thought her father was trying to kill me was a fleeting thought which happened at visit. I distinctly heard Sam tell her father over the phone multiple times that I had a nut allergy, but when we sat down to eat, I started to feel my throat swell up. Sam's father watched me cough, slowly chewing his food. Of course we had an EpiPen on us, but if we hadn't, I could be dead right now. Then it was the time right after our wedding when he knew I couldn't swim, but I am 90% sure he pushed me into the lake when the 3 of us were on the docks looking at his boat. The 3rd time was the charm though. If those hikers hadn't found me, I'm sure I would have died down in that well. You might be wondering why I chose to go to that cabin with a man I thought was trying to kill me. Because I really didn't think he was trying to kill me. My brain insisted that I had misread or misheard the situation, and both those incidents could have been accidents. Also, Sam was keen her father and her husband, and I just couldn't break her heart. I'll never forget the ride to go to the cabin. My father-in-law was a man of few words, so when he decided to tell me a story, I almost sighed with relief that I didn't have to keep talking to fill the dead air between us. He kept his eyes on the road and said there was once a boy who lived a happy life with his family in the forest. It was him, his 3 brothers, his parents, his grandparents, his uncles and aunts and all his cousins. He didn't know much about the world beyond his family home, but he had 1,000 things to do in the woods, so he never wandered. For a time, all was well, and as it should be, the boy and his family lived off the land, hunted and thrived. Until one day on his 19th birthday, the boy saw the woman in white in the gut of the trees. Ethereal and shimmering, she glowed like a white will-o'-the-wisp. When he asked his mother about her, she told him to stay away from the woman. that nothing good comes out of the woods on a sickle moon night. We were close to the cabin now, and as we approached it, a strange sort of feeling was beginning to crawl up my spine. A sense of something being wrong gripping me tightly. The boy listened to his mother. 2 days he did not go looking for the woman. On the third night, he found himself outside the house walking into the woods. As he drew closer, he saw the woman's face. Her gold hair shimmered all the way to her knees. Ice blue eyes and a lovely face that glowed with the promise of a forever his mortal brain didn't understand. The woman offered him her hand. In trance, he reached up and took it. He parked and turned off the engine of the car, but still wouldn't look at me. Instead, he stared ahead into the depth of the forest as he told me this eerie tale. The minute he took that hand, the thing claimed him. They found him a year later at the top of a mountain, living in a cave, naked and insane, speaking a strange tongue in a language which had to be made up. What was terrifying was that both his legs from his knees downwards were gone. And yet, the wounds had been cauterized, and someone or something has clearly been feeding him. His parents brought him home and tried to help him recover his mind. The doctors fitted him with prosthetic legs he kept hidden away. But the boy was never really the same again. When he began to slowly speak again, he spoke of a woman with a skull instead of a face, a long, skeletal crone's body, fangs instead of teeth, clumps of white hair that fell out of her head, and milk-white eyes, the eyes of a corpse. And then, finally, the ear-piercing scream. He fell silent then, and my skin crawling, I asked him what happened to him. My father-in-law broke out of his trance and looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Let me show you how to hunt." The trial was short. My father-in-law was caught in possession of my phone and several other items that suggested what he planned to do. His internet search history revealed extensive ways to murder someone. When they put Cameron Joyce in prison, my wife cried herself to sleep every night for a month. I think she blamed me for what happened, even though she would never say those words. I would catch her looking out from our apartment in the direction of the forest, which we could see clearly. She grew more and more forgetful, wouldn't go to work, would sleep all day. Some days she wouldn't even brush her hair. Her face grew more haggard, and sometimes when I saw her naked form in bed in the moonlight, I could swear I saw her ribs through her translucent skin. Her sadness was going to devour her, and there was nothing I could do about it. One day I came home and she wasn't there. I looked for her everywhere. I don't know how I knew it, but somehow I knew she would be at the cabin. I jumped into my car and sped there at full speed, not caring how many fines I would have to pay. I got there just before dark, and I caught sight of her. She was naked, her back to me facing the forest. "Tam." I called her name as I got out of the car. She didn't turn to look at me. Instead, she stood there, her messy red hair lifted by the breeze. I called to her again, a deep sense of unease in my bones. "Tan." Slowly, she turned to face me, and that was when I saw her face. A skull. A distended jaw that opened much, much too wide. That was when she let out an ear-piercing scream. A sharp pain burst through my head, and I immediately clapped my hands over my ears. I tried screaming my wife's name again, but all I could hear was the shriek that was starting to feel like someone was knifing my brain. My vision swam, and I stumbled backward. A dozen figures had appeared from the woods, all of them with skull-like faces, impossibly distended jaws, and the same milk-white eyes that had replaced my wife's bright green ones. And they were all walking towards me. I didn't even think. I got into my car and started the engine, my ears bleeding from the sound of the scream. I ran. 2 days later, I am couch surfing at a friend's after the doctors had dealt with one perforated eardrum. They told me I was lucky both my eardrums hadn't burst from the volume I was listening to music at. I had just nodded and let them get on with it. There was a ringing in my ears I couldn't quite get rid of, no matter how I tried. There was no way I could explain what had happened in those woods to them. I am waiting for the ringing and the headache to stop before I go looking for Sam again. This time I will take a gun. I'll find her and bring her home. I've already spoken to the police, but I know they just aren't as motivated to find her as me. My phone rings, and I gingerly held it to my good ear. It's a collect call from the prison. I accept it because who else could possibly give me answers? It happened, didn't it? My father-in-law's gruff voice made me nearly drop the phone. I swallowed hard. Sam's gone, I said numbly. She's gone back where she belongs. He said, "You're lucky." How am I lucky? I asked, bitter anger surging through me. She was my wife and your daughter. That thing was no daughter nor a wife. It knows how to mimic being human. Why do you think I told you this story? His voice was low and even. My jaw dropped. Was he really suggesting he was the boy from the dark fairy tale he has told? You're cruel, disowning your daughter, trying to kill me. You should listen to me, boy, and listen good. That creature was dropped at my doorstep a few months after I came home from the forest. It was an infant then, and it butchered my parents. I found pieces of them around their cabin for years. It then proceeded to kill everyone related to me. But it wouldn't let me die or kill me, and I couldn't figure out why until I realized it needed me the way a parasite needs its host. Finally, when everyone I loved was dead and buried, it needed more prey. And it found you. It would take pieces of you, then keep you alive to take pieces of everyone you love. It will feed on your pain as you live through your own horror show. I swallowed hard. He had lost his damn mind, surely. What on earth was he trying to say? If I were you, I would take all my belongings and leave. Leave the state, hell, leave the country. Don't ever look back, you hear me, ever. With a sharp click, he hung up. I wish I had listened to him. I wish I hadn't decided that I needed to rescue my wife at any cost. Instead, I'm sitting here in the dark inside the old cabin looking outside the window, my fingers folded around a hunting rifle. A sickle moon gleams silver, the only light in the jet black night. And there inside the darkness, I think I see a figure shimmer. From a distance, she almost looks like my wife. Almost. Until her inhuman skeletal jaw distends, and she screams.